So this has been a pretty sweet revelation that I've had in my own training, and it was spurred by a question that someone asked me specifically regarding squats. And they said, I can't seem to figure it out, but I always find that right at the base of my neck, right in between my shoulder blades, right where the bar sits on your traps, for some reason directly on my spine, it always gets rubbed raw when I'm squatting, and then it proceeds to either get scabbed over or bleed the next time that I try to squat because the bar rubs it. So sure, some people might say, well, that's just the knurling on the bar. Some bars don't have knurling. Squat with a bar without knurling. Well, if you've ever done that in a sweaty gym, it doesn't really work out because the bar tends to slide down your shirt, especially if you're wearing like a moisture-wicking fabric. So that point is kind of out of question. But the thing that I got to thinking about, because it started happening myself, and I actually went for a physical with some blood work with the doctor, and he noticed it and felt it and said, what's going on there? So I explained, and he just said, well, you need to stop squatting. I said, well, maybe I need to find a new doctor. I'm just kidding, I didn't say that. But anyways, that's what I was thinking. So I was trying to put two and two together, and I couldn't figure out, why would you have a bar that sits specifically on the spine of one scapula itself, one vertebra itself, relative to any of the other ones. And so maybe it's just a bar position issue. Maybe you need to kind of shift into a hybrid between low bar and high bar, and maybe it just sits weird on your spine. But the other thing that I was thinking about is maybe it's actually a breathing issue. Let me expound upon that. A lot of times, at least the individual that asked me, he tends to sit in this very depressed, kind of downwardly rotated shoulder blade position. And because of that, what then can happen is we'll alter breathing mechanics. And I talked about this in another video in terms of how to actually think about diaphragmatic breathing, or breathing with your belly, as some people talk about it. And that's not really the whole story, that's half the story. So when we take in a breath, we want it to start within the stomach and then work its way up into the chest, specifically the upper back. So when you take a breath, obviously you want your chest to rise out, as well as your upper back to rise out, and your stomach as well. We don't want our chest to rise up. If you're interested, go look at that other video. I'll put it in the description below if I think about it, but it's on my channel. Getting back to my train of thought though. So what I was thinking about with this breathing topic is, if someone is only taking a breath into the stomach or into the belly and thinking, I gotta push my stomach out and get as wide or as big as possible, push out against the belt as powerlifters talk about it, maybe what they're doing is they're neglecting to inflate fully the upper apical aspect of their lungs, specifically this area in between their shoulder blades, known as the posterior mediastinum. If you've watched any of my other videos, I probably brought it up at one point or another. This is basically just an area behind your heart that it's an area of your lungs that typically you have a tough time inflating if you are very extended as an athlete, or if you just tend to sit in an overly kyphotic position during the day. Basically, two things that we're very good at in society, but we have a very tough time getting out of it. So I have a lot of other videos in terms of breathing resets that you can use, but specifically in regards to the squat, I want to give you one cue, maybe two actually, but one cue specifically that you can use in your next squat session if you have this problem. I want you to think about when the bar sits on your back, before you're going to unrack the bar, rather than just taking a breath into your stomach down here, I want you to feel that, and then notice your chest rise a little bit, and feel your upper back actually inflate into the bar before you unrack it. So I'll try to show you the difference. It's going to be very hard to see. Maybe if I took my shirt in, but it's still going to be very hard to see on camera because it's very minute. You'll feel it, and you may be able to coach someone if you see it, but it's very tough to actually see this far away. So what some people do is they take a breath only into the stomach, and that's going to look like this. And then they unwrap. What I'm proposing, and I may be able to show you from the side, what I'm proposing is simply to allow the breath to start down here, to work its way up. And you should feel your upper back inflate a little bit, and your traps turn on a little more. A lot of people that are depressed and they have these shoulder blades that are downwardly rotated, they have to almost think about, well, I feel like I have to shrug to keep the bar in position when I squat. Well, that's an issue, definitely, then with breathing. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about, is really focus on getting more expansion of your upper chest, and not specifically up, but out. So think about that area in between your shoulder blades. As you breathe in, that should inflate into the bar. You should feel your upper back and your traps turn on. Second thing I want to talk about is specifically the bracing mechanism within the squat. If we think back to or to my exercise physiology class, if you've had one or if you're familiar with basic anatomy and physiology, there's these things called muscle spindles within the actual muscle itself. And what these do is they register stretch within a muscle. So it's kind of the opposite of a Golgi tendon organ, if you've ever heard of those. Those basically, when you have a muscle that is eccentrically lengthened, very quickly, what they'll do is they'll shut off tone to the muscle as a protective mechanism, which is kind of cool. But then these spindles, what they will do is they will perceive stretch as well as velocity of the stretch for a muscle, and they will cause involuntary contraction to prevent the muscle from injuring itself, which is pretty cool. So, squat. If we're thinking about this breathing and bracing concept, a lot of people will tell you to take in a breath and then brace and lock it down. But the thing that I've found, and this is especially true when watching Olympic weightlifters, is if you cue somebody to breathe and brace, what's going to happen is when they brace down, if you think about it logically, the function of the abs, at least your rectus abdominis, these big six-pack muscles, is to flex the spine. So because of that, if you're cueing somebody to brace really hard, they may actually go into this position of spinal flexion, slightly. In the squat, we know that we need thoracic extension to complete it. So, watch Olympic weightlifter squat. What do? They simply inhale, and then they squat. They don't focus on breathing and then bracing, they just simply inhale. But think back to the muscle spindles. If we stretch a muscle, what is it then involuntarily going to do? Contract. So think about this in terms of the abdominal wall. If we're getting a good breathing strategy, it's automatically going to give us a bracing strategy under load. That's how your central nervous system works. It wants to give you a stable platform as long as everything is in position to fire efficiently. So you got to think, we're turning on paraspinal muscles, spinal erectors, we're turning on abs. If we get this good breath that starts in the stomach, inflates there, and then works its way up into the chest. Everything starts and ends with the breath. If something feels off, consider the torso first before you think about limbs. Similar to the person whose hip flexors always feel tight and chronically short, it's not a hip flexor issue. They're just simply a symptom of a problem that's way downstream. It's a core control issue. So, lots of random thoughts there, but remember, in between the shoulder blades, when you take a breath in, second thing to try is simply don't think about actively bracing before you squat. Taking a nice, full, deep breath, starting in the stomach, allow it to come up into the chest, like a normal breath should, and then go into your squat. Think about sitting straight down, not back. Few thoughts there. Try them out. You guys know the drill. Let me know what you think. Drop me a comment if you want to chat.